What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the Bengals Insiders channel. I'm Sam. I'm your host. I'm joined by Ethan Sargeant.
What's up, guys?
We're going to talk about some of the events that are leading up to the draft. We're going to start with the question that every fan is having in their brains right now. Are we Team Sewell or are we Team Chase? Ethan, I understand that you are Team Chase. Would you like to explain why?
Yes. So before I get into my reasoning behind the reason why I'm on Team Chase, I just want to preface the argument by saying that I am happy either way. I think both players are going to be pillars for whatever team they end up on. And I think the Bengals will be happy no matter which one of the two guys they end up with, whether it's Sewell, whether it's Chase. I'm happy, and the Bengals will be happy either way. But let me explain myself on why I am Team Chase. So personally, the biggest thing for me is that the one offensive weapon that the Bengals lack is the deep ball threat. We saw it last year. Burrow did not complete many passes of over 40 yards. I think there was maybe one or two passes. The one off the top of my head that I can think of is the one to T. Higgins in the Colts game. But aside from that, there really wasn't a ton of deep balls. And we saw it all the time at LSU with Joe Burrow just destroying defenses over the top with not just Jamar Chase, but Justin Jefferson and Terrence Marshall, another guy that could go in this draft. So for me, Jamar Chase is the missing piece to the Bengals puzzle on offensive skill players. You get a guy like Jamar Chase who can stretch the field, who can get players long, force defenses to kind of sit back. And then that opens up all the more space for Tyler Boyd and T. Higgins. And the Bengals love to run that 3 wide receiver set with 2 wide receivers outside and Tyler Boyd in the slot. And then you can bring a guy like Auden Tate in off the bench to make plays on third down. And then you have Mixon in the backfield, and this offense looks scary. And that's not an offense many teams would want to face. And then the other side to that is obviously, yes, there are improvements that need to be made along the offensive line. But this is not just a 1-round draft. It is a 7-round draft. And I think the Bengals are going to go heavy on the offensive line, regardless of whether or not they take Penei Sewell. I think they will take multiple offensive linemen over the course of the draft. And obviously, if they don't take Penei Sewell with the 5th overall pick, I think they would be almost a lock to take a guy like Samuel Cosmi out of Texas, Walker Little out of Stanford, Dylan Redunz out of North Dakota State. Any one of those guys, they'll probably have a pick of 2 or 3 guys that they like. Alex Leatherwood from Alabama is another one. Guys that they're going to take a long look at and see, what their best option is at pick number 38. But obviously, we'll probably do some sort of video Friday before round 2 to kind of discuss who we think, who's gone in round 1 already, and we'll see what the Bengals' options are as they head into round 2. So, yeah, Team Chase.
Those are some good points. And I'll preface mine by saying that I'm pretty on the fence, and I would agree with Ethan that both of those options, Sewell and Chase, are really, really good. I mean, we're picking 5th overall in the draft. No matter who we get, it's going to be a cornerstone of the franchise. That's part of why it's important to get this pick right. And I am on the fence, but I have thought about it, and I've been stronger about Team Sewell in the past than I am now, but I would consider myself Team Sewell. And here's why. We talk a lot about the depth of the offensive tackle position in this draft. Notoriously, the first 3 rounds. There's a lot of depth, and that's undeniable. However, there's also a lot of depth at wide receiver in this year's draft, especially in the niche places. In that wide receiver core, there's a lot of niche skill sets that the Bengals could use really effectively. The guy that I love the most is Demetric Felton out of UCLA, former wide receiver, played running back in college, and is now being drafted as a wide receiver, which I think is more a better match with his skill set, but obviously can play both positions really well, can run the ball, can catch short passes out of the backfield, and can be a threat in the slot as well. He's an example of a niche guy that can have a similar utility as Jamar Chase in a much later pick. Right now, they're projecting him anywhere between the 3rd and the 6th round of this draft. He's all over the place. You can get a niche wide receiver that's really, really talented and can do exactly what you need them to do. There is no such thing as a niche offensive lineman. You either have it or you don't, because the job of an offensive lineman is to be really, really big, really, really strong, and really, really fast for somebody who's 300 plus pounds. There's not really a whole lot of room for error there. There's not a lot of wiggle room. Penei Sewell is far and away the single most talented offensive lineman in this year's draft, and I would argue he is the most talented lineman in the last couple of drafts that have happened over the past few years. He's far and away the most talented player. He has, I would argue, far and away the most upside for an offensive lineman, and I think his utility is much stronger within the Bengals system. Ethan, you talked about the lack of a deep threat. Part of that was that Joe Burrow had one of the quickest release times, was forced to have one of the quickest release times of any quarterback in the league last season. If you look at the players that are on the Bengals roster currently at wide receiver, there are plenty of players who have the skill set to go deep. It's not a matter of whether they can, it's a matter of do they have the time. And I think if you get a guy like Sewell to shore up the offensive line or to start shoring up the offensive line, you're going to get marginally more time in the process, which could help to solve some of those problems. And so I would say I'm team Sewell because I think he has the most utility over Jamar Chase. I see Jamar Chase as somebody who has maybe third or fourth round utility for a first round pick. And so when I look at it from a more holistic point of view, while I'm, happy with both picks, I think Sewell is the best option. And that's my justification for being team Sewell. But both of those options, let's just say this very clearly. We've said this a number of times. Sewell and Chase are both Pro Bowlers. They're both incredibly talented, and we're going to be winning either way, and then that should be incredibly clear. And finally, one thing I want to talk about is the new kind of news cycle around the rest of the draft, notably the teams that are picking before and after us, because there have now been news cycles. The Falcons are interested in potentially trading Julio Jones away, which could mean a lot, right? If they trade Julio Jones, then that brings them into the pool for Jamar Chase or another wide receiver. And also cycles that the Dolphins are really, really interested in a tackle. Ethan, you said it was, who are they? They're getting rid of somebody, correct?
So, yeah, they're getting rid of Eric Flowers, who was notoriously bad in New York, but kind of flipped his career on his head in Washington. And now he went to Miami for a year, played pretty well, started 14 games, and now he's headed back to Washington. Yeah. So, the Dolphins, a sneaky weak spot for them is that offensive line. They really need help. So, honestly, I could see the Dolphins potentially, maybe if the Bengals take Sewell, they might reach for a guy like Rashawn Slater potentially, who has potential to play either guard or tackle. Or they may trade back and look to still take Slater because he's probably a guy who probably wouldn't really go. I think my landing spot for the Slater right now is probably 13 to the Chargers. So we'll see what happens with that. But you're definitely looking at a lot of storylines here over these next couple of days that we as Bengals fans do have to keep our eyes on, because as of right now, it doesn't look like the Bengals will move out of the 5 pick. There were some rumors, a few months ago, but as of right now, it looks pretty much 99.9% set that we're locked in at 5. So the question now is, does a team trade up ahead of us to maybe take a quarterback? Does a team ahead of us trade down? Does Miami there have been some rumors that Miami's looking to leapfrog us as well to maybe have their choice of Sewell or Chase? What if the Falcons take one of Sewell or Chase? As Sam mentioned, potential trade for Julio Jones. Obviously Julio is, older, in the back half of his career, but he's still one of the most talented receivers in the league. There's no doubt in that. So I'm sure plenty of teams will be interested in Julio. So there's a lot of storylines that we have to keep our eyes on, because when draft night rolls around, as of right now, it definitely looks like the top 3 picks are going to be quarterbacks. Right now, I'd say it's Lawrence, Wilson, and then whoever the 49ers see fit, whether it be Mac Jones, Trey Lance, and Justin Fields. Right now, it looks like it's between the first 2, according to Rappaport and company. But we'll see what happens. It's going to be interesting.
Yeah, I wanted to touch upon a few points as well. So when you're talking about the Dolphins potentially leapfrogging the Bengals, that should be an indicator of how desperate the Dolphins are. Looking at offensive line or looking at whatever they're looking at, they're clearly very, very interested and very, very hell-bent on getting what they want. We just don't know whether or not that's Jamar Chase or whether that's Penei Sewell. And that also means that the trade value to just trade spots to swap from 5 to 6 is also something that could be really high, especially if Jamar Chase is off the board by pick 4, or it's looking like Jamar Chase is going to the Falcons. To trade with the Dolphins, allow Dolphins to get Sewell, we could potentially get another pick in the early rounds, which could be really helpful, because when you look at this roster, there's a lot of holes that need to be filled still. They had a pretty successful free agency. They got some of the positions that were going to be hard to draft. notably defensive backs. But they've still got a lot of holes to fill and not a lot of time. So when you're looking at that trade value could be substantial. There are also rumors that the Patriots are interested in trading up into the draft to try to get a quarterback, whichever of the four most likely is still available, which it looks like if the Falcons are trading Julio, it looks like that one of the quarterbacks will still be standing after after they pick and after the Dolphins and the Bengals would have picked. So there's a lot of possibilities for trading back. It's something that the Bengals need to be looking towards. There are a lot of guys also who the Bengals could use in a trade back situation. If they trade with the Dolphins and it goes 3 quarterbacks, then Chase, then Sewell, then obviously Pitts is available at 6, who is a top 4 pick. I think pretty unilaterally a top 4 guy. And you can get a guy like Kyle Pitts. You could trade back further. And you said 13 for Slater. I would say you could trade back a little earlier than that. 9, 10, 11, make sure you get him because he's somebody who can play the guard position as well. And when you look at the weaknesses on the line, the predominant one is Michael Jordan. And if you can get somebody to replace Michael Jordan on that guard spot, big time. That's a big time replacement. And his versatility is really, really good. So there's a ton of different options for the Bengals to trade back if some of these stories end up happening, if Julio Jones is not in Atlanta come draft night. So there are a lot of things for Bengals fans to keep watching. And that's going to be our job in the next couple of days, is reporting that information to you. And so before we go, we want to say we're going to have a lot of content coming out this draft week. We plan on having a few more videos before the end of the draft. So stay tuned. Just keep watching our videos. We'll be back very, very shortly. Thank you.
Sounds great, guys. Stay tuned.